The horse should have been invisible. That was the strange thing. With so many buyers, so many trainers, so many eager hands waving at the auctioneer just hours earlier, he should have blended into the dust and noise without anyone noticing him. Yet the moment Gabby Norris saw him, the world around her seemed to still for a heartbeat. It was the hottest September day Wakefield County had seen in years. Heat shimmered above the packed dirt sale yard, and the sun burned down on rows of horses waiting for someone to decide their worth. The smell of hay, sweat, leather, and dust clung to everything. Buyers shouted. Boots scuffed. Horses tossed their heads nervously. But Gabby stood quietly at the rail, watching one beautiful horse after another enter the ring. At 17, she already knew more about horses than most adults. She could tell a good stride from a faulty one, a calm mind from a troubled one, and a real deal from a disaster. Her father, Roy Norris, stood beside her, his face lined from years of sun, wind, and worry. Their ranch was hanging by a thread. They needed one good horse. Just one. "Remember," Roy said softly, trying not to let his voice shake, "we have $800. That's it. We need a worker. Trail rides, ranch chores, kids' lessons. Nothing fancy." Gabby nodded, even though the words hurt. 2 years ago, their ranch had been full of life. 23 horses. Guests all summer. Money coming in steady. But drought, medical bills, and too many bad months had drained them dry. Now they owned 3 old horses, and hope that was wearing thin. Horses came and went. A golden palomino drew gasps from the crowd, his coat glowing like sunlight. Bids shot past $1,000 before Gabby even dared breathe. He was perfect. He was far out of reach. The next few horses weren't any better. Too young, too old, too green, too expensive, too broken. By late afternoon, the serious buyers had gone home with their prize horses. What remained were bargain hunters and kill buyers waiting for the last, unwanted animals. Then came Lot 73. Gabby's eyes widened. The horse that walked into the ring looked like no horse she had ever seen. His coat couldn't choose a color. Brown mixed with gray mixed with white in strange, uneven patches. His head looked a little too big for his small body. His ears were comically large. His tail was thin. His mane looked chopped with dull scissors. People snickered. A group of teens pointed and whispered loudly, but it was his eyes that froze Gabby where she stood. Deep, dark, intelligent, sad. It was the look of an animal who understood exactly what the world thought of him. The auctioneer tried to fake his usual energy. 8-year-old gelding. Broke to ride and drive. Good manners. Ranch work. Trail riding. Let's start at $100. Silence. No hands raised. Gabby felt a tight ache in her chest. The poor horse stood quietly, not demanding attention, not showing off, just waiting, as if used to being ignored. 50 then. $50. The auctioneer tried again. Nothing. Then the kill buyers raised their hands. A cold wave washed over Gabby. She tugged her father's sleeve. "Dad, look." Quote. Roy took one glance and shook his head. "Sweetheart, we need a horse people want to ride. That horse looks like he was put together with spare parts." "But look at his eyes," Gabby whispered. The auctioneer was nearly begging. 35? Anyone? "A broke horse, folks." One kill buyer smirked. 25. Gabby's stomach twisted. "Dad, please," she said urgently. "We can't let them take him." "Gabby," Roy said gently, "we need a horse that makes people want to come back." "We also need a horse we can save," Gabby insisted. "And we can actually afford him." And before her father could stop her, she raised her hand high. 30, she called out, her voice trembling. The crowd turned. The auctioneer brightened. 30 to the young lady. 35, the kill buyer grunted. 40, Gabby fired back instantly. 50, the man countered. Gabby's heart pounded. 50 mattered. 50 hurt. But the thought of this horse loading into a slaughter truck made her feel sick. 60, she said, louder this time. The kill buyer shrugged and dropped out. The hammer fell. Sold. $60? Gabby gasped. She had done it. She had really bought him. A horse nobody wanted. A horse everyone mocked. A horse that looked like a joke in a ring full of perfection. "What did you just do?" Roy asked, stunned but not angry. "I bought us a horse," Gabby said. "And maybe the best one we'll ever have." As they walked toward the pickup yard, Gabby spotted the strange gelding being led away. When he saw her, he stopped. His big ears flicked forward. He looked straight at her with a quiet knowing. Then he stepped toward her and gave a soft, gentle nicker. Gabby's heart flipped. "I think he knows," she whispered. "Knows what?" her father asked. "That he's coming home." The horse's paperwork said his name was Patches. Given his odd coat, it made sense. But there was something fitting about it, too. Something warm. That night, after getting him settled with their other horses, Gabby sat on the porch watching him explore the pasture. He wasn't flashy. He wasn't pretty. But there was something solid about him. Something steady. Something rare. And somewhere deep inside, she felt the first spark of a truth she didn't yet understand. She hadn't rescued an ugly horse. She had rescued a miracle waiting to be seen. Gabby woke the next morning with an excitement she hadn't felt in years. The sun had barely risen when she hurried out to the pasture, the cool Colorado air brushing against her cheeks. Dew sparkled on the grass, and in the middle of it all stood Patches, his odd-colored coat glowing softly in the early light. He lifted his head when he saw her and walked over with calm, sure steps, as if they'd been friends forever. Gabby slipped the halter on him and felt a steady warmth settle in her chest. She'd taken a risk, one her father still didn't fully understand, but something deep inside told her it had been the right one. "Okay, boy," she murmured, patting his neck. "Let's see who you are." Patches stood still while she brushed the dust from his coat. His ears twitched with curiosity, but not once did he pull away or fidget. Most horses tested new people, pushed boundaries, or showed nervousness. Patches simply accepted her, calm and steady as a mountain. Roy stepped out of the barn, wiping grease from his hands. "You sure about this, Gabby? First rides can tell you everything." "I'm sure," she said, though her stomach fluttered. Buying Patches had been pure instinct. Now she needed proof she hadn't made a mistake. She tightened the cinch, placed her boot in the stirrup, and swung gently into the saddle. Patches didn't tense or shift. He waited for her cue like an old friend who'd carried her 1,000 times before. "Walk on," she said softly. He moved forward with a smooth, steady stride. No hesitation, no stubbornness, no fear. Within minutes, Gabby felt her worry melt into awe. His trot was balanced and effortless. His canter felt like floating. He responded to her legs, her hands, even her shifts of weight, as if he could read her thoughts. Roy watched from the fence, eyebrows raised. "Well," he said slowly, "I'll be damned." But it wasn't until they hit the trails that Patches showed his true worth. The rocky creek crossing that made most horses balk, Patches stepped through it with careful, thoughtful precision. The fallen log blocking the path, he measured it, then jumped through without rushing. A herd of deer bursting from the trees? He didn't spook. He simply paused, ears forward, steady and curious. With every new challenge, Gabby grew more certain. This horse wasn't strange. He was special. By the time she returned to the barn, Roy was waiting, arms crossed, trying not to smile too wide. "So?" "Dad," Gabby breathed, sliding off Patches. "He's remarkable. I mean it. He's unlike any horse I've ever ridden." Roy approached Patches, studying him with a new kind of respect. "Well, maybe you saw something the rest of us missed." That weekend, the Norris Ranch reopened for trail rides, hoping to bring in whatever money they could. Their first client was a nervous businessman from Denver named Calvin Brooks. He admitted he hadn't been on a horse in 20 years. His hands shook as Gabby introduced him to Patches. "This is Patches," she said with confidence. "He'll take good care of you." Quote, Calvin frowned at the horse's odd looks. "This one? He's perfect for you," Gabby said. And she was right. Patches seemed to sense Calvin's fear. He slowed his steps, kept his head low, and moved with the gentlest rhythm Gabby had ever seen. When Calvin tensed, Patches waited. When Calvin loosened up, Patches picked up his pace just enough to keep the ride smooth. By the time they reached the overlook, Calvin was smiling wide, patting Patches' neck like he'd found an old friend. "This horse is amazing," he said. "Like he knows exactly what I need." Word spread fast. The ugly horse with the kind eyes was becoming the ranch's treasure. Soon, parents arrived with their children, especially the ones who were scared or shy. There was 8-year-old Sophie, terrified after a bad fall years before. Patches lowered his head and stood still for her, letting her touch his warm neck until she relaxed enough to ride. There was Owen, a teenager battling anxiety, who found peace in Patches' steady presence. Even the local therapist, Dr. Ford, noticed something different. "He reads people," she told Gabby. "That's a rare gift in any horse." That winter, while picking up feed, Gabby met a woman who knew Patches past. Margaret Wheeler smiled when she heard the horse's name. "Oh, Albert's Patches. That horse was his pride." Albert always said Patches had the biggest heart of any horse he trained. Gabby leaned closer. "Trained? Trained for what?" "For people," Margaret replied. Albert used him for the hardest cases. Kids who were scared, adults who lost confidence, riders who needed something gentle and patient. It clicked. Everything she'd seen suddenly made sense. Patches wasn't just a riding horse. He was a healer. A teacher. A horse trained for hearts, not shows. When Gabby returned home, she found her father repairing the barn door. "Dad," she said, breathless with excitement. "Patches wasn't just any horse. Albert Crenshaw trained him for therapy work. That's why he's perfect. That's why he understands people." Roy paused, surprise softening his features. "Well, sweetheart, sounds like you bought more than a horse." Quote, "I think he's going to change everything," Gabby whispered, and she was right. Requests began pouring in, parents with children who needed confidence, veterans who needed peace, adults recovering from fear and trauma. Everyone wanted the strange little gelding with the big ears and the gentle soul. Patches became the heart of their struggling ranch. But Gabby had no idea just how many lives he was about to change. By spring, the Norris Ranch felt alive in a way it hadn't in years. The drought had eased, bookings were rising, and hope was slowly returning to the place that had once been the pride of Wakefield County. And at the center of it all was Patches, the horse no one wanted, the horse everyone now seemed to need. The ranch soon became a quiet refuge for people who carried heavy burdens. Word traveled through schools, counseling centers, and veteran groups. A strange-looking gelding with a mottled coat and oversized ears was doing things no one could explain. Riders walked away lighter. Children laughed more freely. Adults who hadn't trusted anyone in years found comfort in his presence. One of the first big breakthroughs happened with Tyler Anderson, a 16-year-old who arrived at the ranch with crossed arms, a hard glare, and a court order. He'd been arrested for theft and vandalism and didn't want to be anywhere near horses. "This is stupid," he muttered during the first session. "I'm not a kid." Gabby didn't argue, she simply led him to Patches. "Just groom him today," she said. No pressure. Tyler tried to act tough, but Patches didn't care about attitude. He just stood there, breathing softly, blinking slowly, his calmness gently pressing against Tyler's storm. For a whole week, the boy barely spoke. He brushed Patches without looking at him, shoveled his paddock without interest, and kept his emotions locked behind a tight jaw. But the second week, everything changed. Tyler arrived with red eyes and a stiff posture. He'd had a fight with his foster parents. He looked ready to break something. "Do you want to skip today?" Gabby asked gently. Tyler shook his head. I want to be near him." Patches walked over to the fence the moment Tyler sat in the grass. The horse lowered his head until it hovered just above the boy's shoulder. He didn't nudge. He didn't crowd. He simply offered presence, the kind that says without words, "You're not alone." Gabby stood quietly at a distance. She watched Tyler slowly place a hand on Patches' neck. She watched the boy's shoulders shake. She watched the first crack appear in the wall he'd built around himself. Later, Tyler confessed something that stayed with Gabby forever. "He didn't want anything from me. He just let me be. No judgment, no yelling. Just someone who didn't give up on me." Tyler finished his hours, but he kept coming back. He learned to ride. He learned to teach. Eventually, he was hired by a therapeutic center in Wyoming, ready to help kids who felt just as lost as he once did. When he said goodbye, he hugged Patches' neck and whispered, "You saved me." And he meant it. Stories like that piled up faster than anyone could count. There was Jennifer Winters, the car accident survivor who hadn't trusted anything since the crash. Patches let her spend an entire hour just breathing with him before she ever climbed into the saddle. There was Marcus Rivera, the veteran haunted by memories he couldn't escape. He and Patches took quiet, wordless rides through the mountains, and each ride loosened the tightness in his chest a little more. There was little Anna Thompson, born with spina bifida, who glowed with joy every time Patches carried her gently through the arena. Her doctor said she'd never experienced that kind of movement. Patches quietly proved them wrong. And with every person Patches helped, the ranch grew stronger. Within 6 months, bookings doubled. Within a year, they had a waiting list. Within 2 years, they were known across Colorado for their therapy program. Gabby completed her training and became a certified equine therapy instructor. The ranch added a covered arena, adaptive equipment, and programs for trauma survivors. But through every change, every new face, every moment of healing, Patches stayed the same. Quiet, gentle, wise in a way no one could fully understand. 5 years passed, then 6. And on a warm September evening, exactly 6 years after Gabby raised her trembling hand at that dusty sale yard, she sat on the fence, watching Patches with a group of new children. His coat had grayed a little, his steps were slower, but his eyes were still bright, still searching for the next person who needed him. Roy joined her, leaning on the fence. "What are you thinking about?" "That day at the sale," Gabby said softly. "I keep wondering what would have happened if I didn't bid on him." Roy smiled. Someone else might have seen it. Gabby shook her head. "No, he was waiting for me." And, as if he heard her, Patches looked up, ears forward, eyes warm. He nickered the soft, gentle greeting he'd given her the very first time she saw him. "You know what he taught me?" Gabby whispered. "What's that?" "That beauty isn't about perfection or looking impressive. It's about purpose, about helping others become who they're meant to be." Across the pasture, a shy little girl braided flowers into Patches' mane. He stood perfectly still, lowering his head to make it easier for her tiny hands. In that moment, Patches looked radiant. Not ugly, not odd, beautiful. Truly, deeply beautiful. The horse everyone had ignored, the horse people had laughed at, the horse no one wanted, had become the heart and soul of a healing sanctuary. He had saved lives, rebuilt a ranch, and given people hope they thought they'd lost forever. Sometimes the greatest gifts come in the most unexpected packages. Sometimes the world overlooks the very thing it needs most, and sometimes the ugly horse at the sale turns out to have the most beautiful soul of all.